Manchester United 7, Barnsley 0. All in all, a pretty good night of football for United fans, and it's not often we get to say that, but it was a relaxing night. It was really straightforward for Manchester United, and perhaps a little bit too easy at times. However, I still think we saw a few things in the game which are worth pointing out, so that is exactly what we are going to do today. Starting with United playing from the back. Now, something that we highlighted at the weekend was that United were often trying to play out from the back with a back three. This was in the game against Southampton. We also saw something fairly similar last night. Now, we should point out Barnsley didn't exactly come across as the best pressing team in the world, and generally speaking, it is only Barnsley. I'm very aware of that. I watched the game. But something I found interesting was the way that United built from the back. Like I said, it's a back three in terms of the outfield players. But Bayindir was actually joining them as well at times, almost creating a back four like this. And this meant that Collier, obviously naturally a midfielder, didn't need to receive in deep left back positions. He was able to move a little bit higher into midfield. So that was quite an interesting little idea from Erik ten Hag. And we can see it here in the game. Bayindir right next to Harry Maguire here. And then over at left back is actually Jonny Evans over on the left hand side. And you will see actually eventually as the ball gets moved a little bit higher, Collier was nowhere near a left back position. So this was an interesting little idea that United were trying to use. And at times it worked fairly well. We almost used Bayindir as like that extra outfield player. It gave us that extra option on the ball. And this is something we should do more of. We've got two good ball playing goalkeepers. So do this more because it allows you to work situations like this. Where because we have essentially an extra outfielder with Bayindir, we can find a spare man in these positions. We go into Casemiro on this occasion. He gets on the turn and plays to Christian Eriksen. So that's just kind of the first point there. I liked what United were doing there. I thought it looked decent. Now, as you would expect, after around 10 to 15 minutes, as the match started to settle a little bit and players calmed down, United very quickly started dominating the ball and taking control of possession. But what I found interesting here was the shape that United were using. Because very often we were building in a back three. At times it could be Diogo Dalot tucking into the back three like this. Or it could be Dalot further forward, Maguire, Jonny Evans, and then Toby Collier. But what was interesting for me was that we had midfielders nearby. We had minimum 2 players in midfield a lot of the time. We've obviously seen spells under Erik ten Hag where we're left with 1 central midfielder, and that's been a problem. It was very much 2 in this game. Now that may purely be because of the personnel, Ugarte and Casemiro. But it's an interesting point and something that, again, United need to do on a more regular basis because it gives you control, it gives you a platform to really build from. You've got 5 players in a deep phase here. 9 times out of 10 that is going to outnumber what the opposition are doing. And particularly building with that back 3, when you are able to stretch it like this, you can see for the Barnsley front 2, if they were to try and press, there's a lot of room that they've got to try and cover. What I also liked from this position though, was the way that because United were in control, we could manipulate using our wider player here. Collier on this side, and then when Dalot done it from this side. And what we would actually do sometimes is build with a back 2, and then this player would actually just drop in as the third if we needed it. So for example, if Maguire had the ball on this side, let's say we're building with a back 2, we get a little bit stuck. That's when that player would then kind of drop deeper and step in and be that extra option, outnumbering Barnsley. However, if we didn't need that, if our centre-backs had time, Collier can push further forward, and obviously we've now got more players in forward areas, we can overload the attacking areas a little bit more. So again, that is something interesting from Ten Hag. Again, it's something similar to what we saw in the game against Southampton at the weekend. You can see it here. Collier initially high. As the ball goes towards Harry Maguire, there's this fear of kind of getting stuck a little bit. So Collier is just going to drop deeper on the left-hand side and eventually form that back 3. Nothing, out of this world. Nothing particularly groundbreaking here. But again, just an interesting shape and then something interesting that United are doing. Now I would say, to be honest, those were almost the main tactical lessons from the game in terms of interesting things that we need to keep an eye out for moving forward. I would say what the rest of the match was ultimately what we've already seen this season, but also in pre-season, really working. Some of Ten Hag's principles really clearly on display and proving that they can be effective, particularly when you have better players than the opposition. So one of those principles is going to be what we've spoken about a lot this season. Playing the ball out down one side and then trying to switch the ball to the far side. So you're trying to draw players over from the opposition like this with the aim of creating space over here. United done this fairly effectively and we saw it in the build-up for one of the goals. The first goal I believe this is. We've got Anthony deep on the right hand side. He plays the ball to Dalot. Dalot then moves the ball back to Anthony. The first thing we're seeing here is good technical ability from United. And I think we have improved this season in this area. Tight spaces, our players are a lot better on the ball than what they once were. and it allows United to move the ball from the back. Eventually we move into Casemiro. I mean, the Barnsley press is incredibly poor. He's got a lot of time on the ball. He lumps the ball forward up towards Eriksen. Eriksen does well, moves the ball wide to Garnacho, but you can see by moving the ball from one side to the other, the space we then get. On this occasion we actually take it one step further though, because Garnacho then hits a ridiculous switch, by the way. I didn't realise he had this in his locker. If he can do this on a regular basis, there's a conversation to be had on the left wing, because this is a different skill set that we're not used to seeing from him. The pass was brilliant, and then from there, all the work was Marcus Rashford, and he does brilliantly. It's great to see him confident again. Hopefully he can keep that going forward. But what's interesting there is again that idea of drawing a team deep, and when they can't quite get close enough to us, and they give us time, how good we are when we then move forward. And it was also great to see a clinical display as well. Another sort of attacking idea of Erik ten Hag's that you may have noticed in this game is that wanting to turn 1 versus 1 situations out wide into 2 versus 2 situations. And once again in this game we saw how dangerous that could be. When you move the ball forward early to a wide player and he isolates the fullback, you're 1 versus 1. But then when your fullback is willing to put that effort in, to make a selfless run, sometimes they're not even going to get the ball, but to make that run forward, to turn this into a 2 versus 1 situation. We've seen this a lot this season. We saw it in pre-season, we saw it last season. I thought last night our decisions were often quite good in this area, and that really is the changing point for the success of the United attack. Because we get into these positions a lot, this is about individuals making the right call. And again, I think largely we did last night. United were just very efficient with everything that we've done. We've got Anthony marked just behind me there. Apologies for being in the way. But he's 1v1. He is 1v1 with this fullback. But Diogo Dalot is going to make sure that isn't the case for long. He is going to absolutely fly around on this overlap. He comes absolutely bombing forward into the final third, making the run round. And then Anthony uses him. And again, you can see the effect of this. Dalot gets towards the byline, which we really don't do regularly enough because we don't make the right decisions. But Diogo Dalot gets towards the byline, cut the ball back, Garnacho has a brilliant chance, and we have a couple of shots in quick succession. Again, this is nothing new, but this is proof that what we're working on does have some sort of substance to it, that it can go somewhere if you like. The proof of Erik ten Hag's attacking work continued to be on display. Obviously this video is a little bit choppy, moving from point to point, but we scored 7 goals, and those goals were some of them quite different to each other. So we do have to cover a few different points here. And the next one is the usage of minimum width. You know, not having players hugging the touchline, but actually getting our forwards fairly close to each other. I felt that our front three really rotated quite nicely. Of course, we had Rashford up front, who isn't naturally a striker, but I felt that he'd done a really nice job of linking in midfield. It's never going to be perfect when he plays that role, because he isn't that sort of player, but he had some really nice, smooth movements. What I also liked, though, was that when he could move a little bit wider, he could move to the right-hand side, and Anthony would come in onto his stronger left foot. Logically, it makes sense, it's quite nice. But also, he could drift towards the left-hand side, and Garnacho could come in, and that seemed like a really good dynamic as well, those two working together. And the benefit when you get these 3 players, or any 3 attackers really, close to each other, is they can combine, they can work together, but also sometimes you're going to get a little bit of luck in the way that you attack, and we've got it here. Every single Manchester United player is within these 2 lines. This is minimum width. We are very compact. But look how many Manchester United players walk close to each other. All 3 of our forwards are up there, basically holding hands in the final third. And like I said, the benefit of that is when you get someone like Marcus Rashford on the ball, who's going to take risks, tails up, he's got a bit of confidence, he's going to take a risk on the ball, he's going to take players on, he moves inside. Now, here, the dribble doesn't go that well, he beats one player but then gets tackled. But this is where you make your own luck a little bit. When you take risks on the ball, but also have teammates nearby, you're going to get that benefit that sometimes the ball is going to bobble to you. If these players were wide, if Garnacho was on the touchline on one side, Anthony was touchline on the other side, this goal never happens. Rashford just gets tackled, the move kind of peters out. But because we have all of our players really close to each other, we get a little bit of fortune. But I felt that we made the luck ourselves with the positioning. And it breaks through nicely for Garnacho in the penalty area. I thought he looked really sharp. We're going to do a video on him later. An incredible performance, to be honest. But I love this kind of sharp movement in the box, being switched on, being ready to take that chance in the final third. And that's how United were all night, actually efficient and effective in front of goal. The last thing I just want to touch on in terms of United's attacking ideas in this game was the transition. We have to acknowledge the fact that Barnsley were terrible defensively and so naive. They pushed fairly high up the pitch, but they didn't get a ton of pressure on the ball. but the defensive line was high and it left so much space in behind. We saw Rashford getting into these areas, Anthony doing it as well, Garnacho from the left. These spaces were there all day long. There were times where we were 3v3 against the last line after one pass. So Barnsley were terrible, but you still saw that transitioning threat of United, and in particular, the sort of up, back, and then through passing combination that we've spoken about in the past. I've done videos on that on the channel, go back and check them out. But what this does is when you go up first, you draw players out, then you go backwards, and because these players have been drawn out, you then have space to play into. And it worked really nicely, and we did actually see it for one of the goals quite nicely here. Ugarte breaks play up in the midfield. Again, we might do a video on his debut tomorrow, we'll see. Ugarte wins the ball. He eventually plays the ball to Marcus Rashford. So that is our first up pass, the pass that's gone forward. Rashford here drops in, does the linking play, outside of the right boot, then plays our backwards pass. But what you can see, if I quickly mark this, it's taken a second, but if we quickly mark this, it's drawn this player out. It's drawn this player out of position because Rashford has dropped deeper. But then we've passed the ball backwards, Eriksen's got room, and we know that Eriksen with room like this is going to play a nice pass. And Garnacho has all the room in the world, runs in on goal. It's a really nice finish. Again, we'll cover it more later, him individually. I was really happy with this finish though because he wasn't always clean here last season, but this looked really efficient, really efficient. And ultimately for me, I think that was the buzzword for last night. It was efficient, it was effective, it was ruthless in the end. 7-0, you really can't complain about it. And to be honest, I think it was the perfect night for Erik ten Hag. Apart from maybe someone grabbing a hat-trick or Xerxes getting a goal from the bench. Apart from that, we had rotation in defence and we protected players that needed to be protected. We got to see Bayende play a game in goal. Kobbie Mainoo had the night off. Casemiro had 90 minutes as captain, which is going to be good for his confidence after the drop-off in confidence against Liverpool. We had an Ugarte debut, but we managed to protect him. We managed to build some more form into Christian Eriksen, 2 great goals. Rashford continues upping his confidence, but also gets a rest. Garnacho, we saw the effect of him. Bruno Fernandes got a rest as well, until the last 30 minutes, where he creates 6 chances when he comes on, by the way. It's insane. All in all, it was the perfect night for Erik ten Hag and United. We're not going to get carried away. It was just Barnsley. But if you can't celebrate a 7-0 win, what can you celebrate? It's a great night for United. We saw some really good attacking play. Now let's take that into the Premier League this weekend and see how we go. In terms of actually today, this video, we are finished there. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.